So I'm very honored to be here to speak with the talented actors who are in the movie Gold.
Thank you.
Credits are still rolling. That's good. We'll multitask. That's good.
700 Thai crew members.
A lot of very brave Thai crew members. So before we dive into the movie, I always like to ask talent, especially for this audience, what do you consider your big break as an actor? Was it someone who gave you a chance? Was it a role that you scored because a casting person saw you? Is there a moment where you think, wow, that was my big break, and who gave it to you? Start with Matthew.
Start with Matthew?
Sure, or Bryce, anyone, jump in.
I got a couple.
Desperate to hear.
I got a couple. Is this on? Can you hear me? I got a couple. I was in the right bar at the right time in Austin, Texas, and got kicked out of So Said Bar because I had... we were telling stories too loud with the casting director, Don Phillips, of a film called Dazed and Confused.
I've heard of it, yes.
And 3 a.m, we're riding home in a cab, and he goes, "You ever done any acting before?" And I was like, "Well, I was in this Miller Lite commercial for about that long." And he goes like, "You might be right for this part. Come to this address in the morning, 9:30. I'll leave a script for you." And there was that script. Had 3 great lines. What I like to call, sometimes you get a character that has a launch pad line, one of those lines that you read and you're like, whoa, if this guy means this, then there's an encyclopedia on him. And one of those lines was David Wooderson sitting outside of the pool hall. And they said, "You're going to go to jail if you keep that up." And he says, "No, man, that's what I love about those high school girls, man. I get older, but they stay the same age." And so I worked for weeks unpacking who was that guy. And it turned out being who I thought my brother was when I was 11 and he was 17. It wasn't him, but that's what that was. So that would be my start.
It's a good one. Edgar?
It was Domino with Tony Scott. Yeah. Thank you, yeah. May he rest in peace. He's there laughing and watching us right now. He gave me my first break. I was here in LA promoting a Venezuelan movie that was shortlisted for the Golden Globes for Best Foreign Film. Punto y Raya, that was the film. And I heard that Tony Scott was the casting director of that movie, Denis Chemian, saw me in the Venezuelan film and then invited me to audition for this movie, and it happened to be a director's session. So Tony was there, and with the energy that he had, was trying to improvise, and then there's a for those who have seen the movie, there's this scene in the elevator when I'm talking to Mina Davis, and then Mina Suarez, sorry, and then I said I started speaking Spanish to her, and then she doesn't understand, and then I said, "Well, but this is LA, you should speak Spanish." And that was something that I improvised in the audition. And later on, like months later when we're shooting, he confessed to me that was the line that got me the part. You know, yeah, that was the line that got me a part. And that was my first, I think it was first break and my first international movie, and what really allowed me to be here with Bryce and with Matthew and, you know. And
what about me? You don't want to be here with me?
Yeah, and with you, Stacey. Yeah. Yeah, gracias. But I was with you earlier.
That's true. We were in the same screening today, so
exactly. I saw the movie today.
I could not berate the movie when we were watching it because he was sitting right next to me.
Yeah.
And Bryce?
Definitely for me, I had kind of like one of those sort of things that happen every once in a while where you get discovered. My first film was a movie called The Village that M. Night Shyamalan directed. And I was really super lucky because I was doing a show. I was doing As You Like It at the Public Theater in New York. And, oh, thank you. Yes, Shakespeare. And Knight came and saw the play. And then he waited afterwards, and I recognized him because I was like obsessed with like Unbreakable and Sixth Sense, and had seen all the like DVD special features, so I knew what he looked like. And so I walked into the lobby. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's M. Night Shyamalan. And he came over and he just was like, you know, complimentary, and I was like, oh my gosh, that was the nicest thing that's ever happened in my life. And then a few weeks later, I got a call that he wanted to go to lunch, and I just sort of. That there was something he wanted to ask me about. And I was like wondering what it would be. I was 21 at the time. And I thought, oh, he's raising kids in the business. Maybe he wants to ask about like what my parents did, because my dad's a director, like, you know, how they kind of, and he's raising his family on the East Coast. Maybe he wanted to kind of ask about that. So I go to lunch with him, and we're sort of he's like sharing stuff about his like work and his career and his dreams. And I'm like, whoa, he's like such a like open, like vulnerable person. And then in the middle of the conversation, he's like, I you know what, I should just get to this. I don't even know how to say it, and he pulled out a manila envelope and pushed it across the table. And he's like, I'd like you to be the lead of my next movie. And I was like, wait, what? And I said, don't you want me to audition? And he was like, no, I don't know. I just want you to know that I believe you can do this, and I would love you to do it. And so I walked home and kind of in a daze and read it. And my husband was sitting behind me and read it along with me. And he was crying like the whole time because he was so excited. And then I called night afterwards and was like, yes, no, of course I want to do this. So it was one of those kind of crazy things that happened. Just nuts.
Crazy stories are always the great stories. So Gold, start with Matthew. What appealed to you about KennyWells? He's in some ways a tragic figure, but he's in some ways like all of us. He wants more for himself and for his family. And this particular story is sort of off the wall in a lot of ways, but at the same time, it is kind of like a classic American story. And you've played a lot of these types of characters, by the way. But what specifically about Kenny was distinct for you?
I mean, he was a great dreamer. This is one of 3 scripts I've read that the first time I read it, I was like, I've got to be a part of this. I've got to be this guy, KennyWells. And, you know, as we work to try and work our way to seeing a character from the inside out. Sometimes it happens quick. Sometimes it happens a few weeks down the road. Sometimes it happens a month into filming. Sometimes you finish filming and you're like, I still didn't see it from the inside out. This guy I read the script and I was like, I know this guy from the inside out. Did the research on the real guy. His name is David Walsh. But the thing, I think what helped me the most was I knew him, or he was who my dad was, who my dad did business with. These shady people that my dad did. My dad loved shady business. He and my older brother still say this to this day. Much rather do a shitty deal with some fun people than a good deal with some straight people. And I remember going on the road with him and him taking me building to building through different parts of rural America and even out to Nevada. And he would take me, his 10-year-old son, to go with him to collect money because it would shame the people that owed him money. And it worked sometimes. And so I saw some things. And I met these KennyWellses of the world that were like my father, throwing their legs over the side of the bed every morning saying, today's going to be the day. And my dad's line was, I'm going to hit a lick. I'm going to hit a lick. And he never hit that lick until he moved on. But still, every single day, he was larger than life and had an insatiable appetite. And there's millions of us out there that don't have a path to the American dream through the front door. We're going to con and work and finagle our way in through some side hatch door that maybe doesn't even exist, and hopefully get lucky while we're scratching the lottery ticket. And KennyWells was one of those guys. And so I just hooked into the humanity of the guy, saw the heart of the guy, the loyalty of the guy, the trust that he had. And then there's that great little poem that we brought into the film about, hey, what's that tattoo on your arm? And that was something that came up with the lady I was working with when I was getting ready for the part. It was, bird with no feet sleeps on the wind. And I know those, I got to meet those people that if they ever put their feet down and land, proverbially, they're dead. They're done, but they're just skimming the tips of the blades of grass, like the bird on flight, and they just don't put the feet down. I always looked at our love relationship with Kay and Kenny like this. Then Kenny said, hey, let's jump off the cliff, hold my hand. I promise you we're going to learn to fly before we land. And they've been falling off that cliff for 15 years, and they still don't know how to fly, but they still hadn't landed. And she hadn't let go of Kenny's hand, which is that unconditional love in that relationship. So I just felt like I knew that I'd seen the KennyWellses of the world.
And the movie, of course, says based on true events, and you mentioned the real life person on whom he's based, but how much of this is actually how it happened and how much has been conflated for, the screenwriting purposes?
Well, it's pretty closely to what went down. I mean, this all, story-wise, plot-wise, did happen. This was hundreds of $1 million were lost because two men went off and found gold in Indonesia, and people invested hundreds of $1 million in the story, but never actually had their hands on any tangible gold. So it was on the story, on the lore. And, the guy I was playing, David Walsh, was said he died of a heart attack, basically in a prison, a mansion that was a prison of his in the Bahamas, basically to keep people from getting to him. But the other story is that he was actually murdered. And then Mike Acosta was said to have been seen in Italy 8 years ago. So, yeah.
Drinking coffee in Rome. $82 million that gives you enough to drink.
And Edgar, your role is, and even just that adds to it, the sort of mystery of this character who you're playing. He's a villain in the one hand. At the end, we see him as that, but then you reflect on your performance throughout, and you think, like, you're right. We actually didn't know what to make of this guy, but we don't really think about it till the end, which I think is clever. It's very restrained. And how are you able to sort of navigate he is this, he's not this throughout, and keep it, I guess, mysterious for us? Because I think he's still mysterious, as we've just discovered.
Yeah. Well, it was well, we've been talking about it today because I saw the movie today for the first time, and it was interesting for me to discover and to humanize a character that only lives in the memories of another character, which is Kenny. So the fact that the whole movie is told from the point as a hindsight and from the point of view of Walsh. So it was a very interesting process to build to make it real and to make it human. Although, because this is the thing, today I left the screening, we saw it together, thinking about this Gabriel Garcia Marquez quote, where he says that life is not what happens, life is how we remember it. And basically, Mike Acosta is how Kenny remembers him. So it was very interesting. It was we discussed and we discussed a lot, and at the same time, we agreed on not discussing a lot. Matthew and I, as Kenny and Mike, we wanted to keep the secret and the mystery. I don't know, probably he never existed. I mean, the only objective moment in the movie is at the very end when he opens the envelope, and that's the only real grounded, like the only moment that is grounded in reality. The rest is just a reconstruction of memory. And that was very interesting. I don't know if he answers the question of the mystery, because it's still a mystery for me, but that's how we didn't think much about it, which is and there was a building of trust as well. I mean, I think that this movie is all about trust, and when Kenny says at the end, it was never about the money. It was about the gold, and they're total different things. Because gold is our dreams and our sense of self-respect and self-worth and legacy. So we never did it for the money. We did it for. Right. We wanted to stick it to the man.
Stick it to the man.
Yeah, for those who doubted us, for those who thought that we were
prove them wrong.
Prove them wrong. I mean, for those who overestimated us, So that was the quest. It was the journey. And I just love the movie. I think it's a great story. I loved.
He's kind of like the Kaiser Sose of the story. He's sort of like Kaiser in the sense where, was he there, or wasn't he? And if he was,
you
he
never
left
know.
his mark.
I mean, yeah. He's in Italy, in Rome.
Hopefully enjoying himself. Bryce, I thought a lot about watching this film. How easy it is for your character, your type of character, to sort of get lost in the typical tropes of the woman at home while the man is away having the adventures, which, by the way, is a structure that Hollywood loves. Really think about it. But I'd love that you brought dimensions to her, and the love that Matthew spoke of. It felt real, and it felt like you were rooting for him. And I was wondering, what did you bring to her? And by the way, did you know the woman who you were playing? Was there a real life person behind this, or was she was part of the the lore of the story, or?
Yeah, no. Kay is not based on anyone who, in particular, who existed, and kind of similarly to what Edgar said, it is really true that this is, KennyWells is a utterly unreliable narrator, and and you're seeing his perspective rather than necessarily the truth, and I think it's what's so interesting for me with this movie. And this is not a movie about Kay, so I won't go on too long. But those tropes of these big movies that this character leaned into them because those tropes were real, in particular during that time period, and those tropes are actually real within dynamics like this and these kinds of relationships, and so. For me, it was sort of like the gold, like I dyed my hair so that it looked more gold because, she was the gold all along. But again, it's sort of this character that all at once, it's like you need to believe that the love between them is real. And in the same way that Kenny is a believer, she is a believer as well, and she believes in him unconditionally, and yet to also play the balance of someone who has the complexities to also know that this is also not healthy all the time as well. So it's kind of it was interesting. It was interesting to think of it in that way, and a little bit of a challenge as well to not just kind of allow the sort of her to be two-dimensional because it again is a memory, is an experience that is one-sided intentionally.
And Matthew, I think it's safe to say you physically transformed for this role. Unless you're wearing
cheeseburgers and beer.
Well, that was
a lot more fun putting it on than taking it off.
So I'm always amazed at, and by the way, the exact opposite of what you did for Dallas, which was so incredibly extreme on the other end. How long did it take to get to this stage, this physical stage? Yeah. And how did you maintain it? And did you have any health struggles? I mean, I looked at you throughout this whole thing going, oh my God, like this guy is like, he's just a heart attack waiting to happen. I was worried for you.
I got a couple of angles in the answers to this. When it took I gave myself about 5-6 months. And Stephen reminded me tonight about how I didn't set out to go, oh, KennyWells is a fat ass. But as I got into Kenny and who he was and the insatiability of the guy, all of a sudden I'm looking around and I was getting fat. And I had an amazing amount of energy, and appetite. Yeah, on all fronts. And was who KennyWells was. That's who I thought. That's who my dad was. That's who Chicago John was. That my dad bought the hot watch off of. That's the guys that he invested with in the diamond mine in Ecuador. There were no diamonds, but that was the Chuck Bouzon that I met. These were the people that I grew up and got to meet and see. Look, what I did learn, and this is a fun part about, which was putting on all the weight. And I made a rule with myself. I said, look, you're going to get to about 4 months and you're going to be like, and I go, you're going to look at yourself with me and go, good God, what have you done with yourself? And I go, if you hesitate to have another cheeseburger or have another beer, you have to have double right then. I said, you have 5 months. Trust yourself that you can come back to this. And I had wonderfully, my wife can attest to this. My nickname in my family was Captain Fun for 6 months because pizza night was every damn night of the week. Milkshakes for breakfast. It was, let's get it on. Yes.
Your kids loved you during this time.
They loved it. And the thing that I learned was I never got exhausted because I noticed that now, if you do it for years, yes, it's going to catch up with you. But for that 6 month run, the only reason you get exhausted is if you think about quitting. So on Monday morning after a big weekend, I was like, oh, you're doing the work for Kenny. Great. So I had great energy. I needed less sleep. I was smiling and laughing about everything. It was a fun man to inhabit from the inside out. And he ended up being, 217 pounds.
Well, we're glad you
happy.
survived the
You were a
transformation.
happy fat ass in Thailand.
That was a happy.
I can testify that.
And you filmed in Thailand, is that correct?
Thailand.
Okay. How long
for
were you
Indonesia.
actually there on location shooting?
2 months?
6 to 8 weeks, 2 months.
Yeah, like 2 months.
Yeah, that was we were there, and then we were Albuquerque for Reno, and then New York for New York, but mainly in Thailand, and that's where we started. And we had the monsoons. We lost certain sets that floated.
I was going to
down
ask
the
how the
river.
weather affected the shoot. Was it pretty dramatic?
Just like in the movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the scenes. Yeah. You know, you shoot half the scene, it's pouring down rain, and the sun comes out, and you have to move on. And then all of a sudden it start raining in the afternoon. You jump back to the other scene to finish that scene because it matches.
I like 6 different type of weather in an hour. You know, because we were in the middle of the monsoon season in the tropics, so it would really go from storm to drizzle, then sun. It was a nightmare for the cinematographer, for sure.
Did you have to change the script at all to accommodate what you were able to shoot on location? Were there scenes you had to lose? Were there scenes you added?
We added some things. I don't know if we actually lost.
Yeah, I mean, this was a train that never stopped. I mean, even if we lost sets, because we lost like 6 or 7 sets the first week. Yeah, because
that ended up floating down a river.
I mean, we came to location one day after
They
rehearsal.
said monsoon season was coming.
Yeah.
We didn't know it was literally, you could see it come across, it came and it stayed.
Yeah, and it flooded all the location, and we lost like 6 sets, and sometimes we would be shooting in a scene in the river, and the river the water level would be at your ankles, and then in an hour would be up your waist. So we needed to get fast, to get up fast. It was, but it informed the characters. I mean, the struggle that these characters went through in the jungle was the same one. So, the same one that we went through. So that really helped. In hindsight, I mean, now it's, at the time it was,
You didn't have to act like you were
exactly
slapping mosquitoes.
Yeah.
You were,
or that you were that you were wet all the time, and then we had to use the snake powder, right? How do you call that?
How did you deal with the
rod crotch? Dude, it was horrible. Man,
that's right.
I mean, the rod crotch, right?
It was tough to say dry in places that you didn't want to be moist.
Exactly. That was a mother,
Yeah.
It was,
People were bit by things, and Gaghan, our director, thought he was going to have to amputate his leg from the knee down.
There was an avalanche.
Avalanches.
Avalanches. The scene when we shot when Acosta goes to the Dayak village and gives water to the little kid in the little hut, where we were shooting there, and there was an avalanche of trees and big chunks of trees that were coming down from the mountain, and they just crushed the hut. And then we had to literally jump out of the hut, and I landed on a goat. And actually Stephen tells the story better because he was outside of the hut. And then he could see all the Thai people looking up and going, and because it's a very melodic, it's a tonal language. So it feels like they are singing all the time. It's a beautiful language. It's very tonal. And then it was like they were all, I mean, the face, I mean, the horror in their faces was incredible. And then suddenly, and we were shooting, and we would listen to the what's going on, and all the people, and then we're here. But we're here. But I landed on the goat, and the goat is safe. So it's
I feel like
no animals were harmed.
It sounds like an episode of Survivor. Like when Stephen, the director, got a cut, and then his leg became entirely infected, and that's always like the rule in Survivor. If you get injured, even just the tiniest bit,
you have to leave.
You're gonna die. So I'm sort of like,
those are real snakes. The bullfrogs. Remember, Mom? They sounded like cows at night. Because the thing is that I loved it. And because we were in very remote, it was our old Heart of Darkness, without the heart attack. And then wait,
is Matthew Brando in this situation?
What?
Is Matthew Brando in this situation?
Not at all. Not at all. No, he was a happy fat ass.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Over the summer, actually, at Toronto, I had the pleasure of speaking with Bryce about her Black Mirror episode, which, by the way, have you guys seen?
Yeah.
Amazing.
I just told her that I saw it last night.
It's
You're brilliant.
Really
brilliant.
just frighteningly relevant to our times. And we talked about the high bar that she had set for herself early in life, having the parents that she has. And we kind of talked about what directors should expect from actors and vice versa. But I'm always wondering from actors, what do you wish directors better understood about working with actors? Because we have people in here who probably do both and also write. And I've spoken to a lot of actors about kind of what they wish directors better understood. I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Ooh, that's such a good question. What I do know about directors is that my directors are always, I'm sure you guys feel like have experienced this. Directors are always asking how other directors direct because they don't get to have that experience. You know, they only know sort of the way they do it. And my dad, having been an actor, he felt like that has been such an asset to him as a filmmaker because he's had experience from, you know, directors who were great and then directors who weren't as strong with working with actors. And so I guess what I would say, because I've asked him that question, and I think it has to do with, I mean, what I guess I feel works is when a director observes how the actor is talking, like what their language is around the work that they do, and sort of what they just to kind of pick up on how an actor most naturally works, and to really listen for that and to pay attention to that, because there is a process, and sometimes things become like so kind of just logistical and mechanic. Especially when there are a lot of visual effects and whatnot, that you can lose sort of the sense that there's a person on set having a deeply emotional experience, and what is their language. So I think like that's something that my dad has passed along to me, to sort of really pay attention, as opposed to imposing like, okay, so the objective of your scene is that, you know, the way that the director works, like really trying to see, you know, what might be different about this person. And then rehearsal, honestly. It isn't always necessary, but I think there's or the chance to really work things out in advance, because I feel like every other department, there's a set time that department has to have at a minimum to prepare. And that's the only department where that's not the case is acting department. And I think that kind of just bringing actors into the creative process, you know, as partners and, you know, as people who are collaborators. I think bringing them in earlier, I think that all stories would be well served by that, you know, if that feels right given the circumstance. So.
And gentlemen, do you have any thoughts on that as well?
Yeah. I mean, I know I've had times where I'm like to a director, just tell me what to do. Read the line. Just read it. I'm not getting it. But most of the time, if I'm fortunate in seeing the character from the inside out, if an actor's seeing it from the inside out, you want a director that's just putting fuel on that fire. Go, fly, man, go. You know, not many of us like to be told what to do. And I know I've gotten the best direction for me anyway. If I go back to my very beginning, Richard Linklater in Dazed and Confused, I've never heard the guy say the word no. You know what he did to all the characters to start off in Dazed and Confused? First thing he did was handed everybody a cassette, and he had recorded music for every character and said, hey man, have a listen to this. I think this is what your character would be listening to. Wow, my homework's to go ride around and jam to Ted Nugent, Bob Dylan, Van Halen, but he's not telling you what to do. I was allowing the actor's imagination to find our own answers so we can own what we're going to do. And that's I think, something that's really important. I mean, I'm looking for a couple of things. I want to have a similar sensibility as the director. I want to be in the same movie, I think. I want to have a similar sense of humor and a similar sense of, for a word I like to use, a similar sense of cool. And what I mean by cool is, like in this with Stephen, cool was like, let's be real, let's be human. Let's no attitude whatsoever. That's cool. Let's hang our hat on humanity at for every take and every single scene. And that's what'll be cool. Not trying to act cool, but that's reality will be cool. That's a couple of things that I've enjoyed or I'm looking for.
And Edgar and Bryce, what is something about working with Matthew that would surprise everyone in the room that you didn't expect?
No, I mean it's I love the guy now. So no. It didn't come out right. What I'm saying
After
is
working together or tonight?
What?
After working together or tonight?
After working together. Yeah, of course. No. I mean he's one of the most generous persons I've ever met. One of the most generous actors, and he's got an open mind, and he's really there to help you. I mean, not only to help his character and his actors, but to help the movie to be better. And he's it's so inspiring, man. I mean, it's becoming personal. I mean, I really love you, man, and you're great. And this movie was about building that trust, and thank God we built that right away. I mean, there was a great chemistry, and we see things very similarly. It's you're very generous and very open, and we really struggled. I mean, we went through war, because everybody in the movie. I mean, when we were in Thailand, as we told earlier, I mean, it was tough, and we struggled together, and we pulled through, and I think that those characters, you can see that the love and the trust is palpable, and I think it's great. It's very, in these times, it's amazing to have the opportunity to do a movie that is about loyalty and about trust, and because that's what civilization is built on. It's built on trust. I mean, a trust that you would give the brick to this person, so that then this person will give it to the next person, and then we build something. And that's what I think the movie's about. And if you hadn't been the open-minded person that you are, and the grounded and compassionate person that you are, it would have been very difficult for me to do it. So I really thank you in front of all our fellow colleagues here, because it's great. I mean, it's always about making a great show, for sure. But when you have the privilege and the blessing of becoming close and having fun and gaining a new friend, that is a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Amen. Thank you. Thank
you. And Bryce, do you have an answer that can top that?
Yeah, yes, I do. No, I think that it's so the question is like, what about him would maybe surprise everyone? Okay, so I mean, this is just, I'll mention a really crazy, impressive thing that I've never seen done to this level, which is that Matthew inhabited KennyWells so thoroughly that he would improvise in scenes stuff that, I mean, that I was just like, you have a writer in the other room, I'm sure. Like it was not stuff that was from you. It was as if it was channeling. That's what it seemed like. Like he was a completely different person. Matthew McConaughey and KennyWells are very different individuals. But he inhabited him in a way where it was just, he could go anywhere with him. He knew him so thoroughly, and he knew his rhythm, and he knew what he would say, and he just he was like a shapeshifter. And because of the style that you guys had on set with the shooting, where things felt spontaneous, and sometimes you wouldn't know whether or not things were being filmed even, just the room would come alive, and we would all just be in that environment, and Matthew would be, holding court as KennyWells, and then we would blink our eyes and it would be 4 hours later and we were done with the scene. But it felt alive it was like theater. So, but I've never seen that. And even though I kind of look young, I've been watching for 35 years. Like I've been privy to, it's one of the greatest blessings of my life. I've been privy to some of the most kind of brilliant shapeshifters in the history of our work, and yeah, that was crazy, Matthew. That was really unbelievable. Yeah,
thank you, Bryce.
That was inspiring.
Thank you.
Totally inspiring.
Yeah.
Because it's when the actor It's like when you don't need writers anymore. You know, when they become a real human being.
Well, we have a few audience questions to get to before we wrap up. This is from Austin, and he would like to know what aspects of inhabiting a character still surprise you and excite you after so many years of doing this job. Feel free, anyone can answer.
What parts of inhabiting a character?
What aspects of that process of climbing into someone's skin surprise and or excite you after all these years?
I think for me is that, you know, you look at the script and you take what it gives you first, and that's your source material. And then you start mining, start digging in. And you don't want to lock into things too quick, because you want to still just give your time for imagination to come in and see what's coming. It's when it starts to go into a personal POV is when it gets really exciting. And then everything you do every single day in the world somehow applies. You're seeing it through the lens of that character. And that's when it is the buzz of a fucking lifetime, which is what I really love about getting to do what we do. And sometimes it happens sooner, sometimes it happens later. Sometimes you have to work harder to do it. Sometimes you got to back off and say it's not about powering through it. It's about letting it go. But when that starts happening and everything becomes a subjective POV, that's when we're riding the bull, you know.
And what are you most critical of when you watch yourself? Is there something specific that bugs you, or something that you'd like to celebrate, or something you just think, wow, that's unexpected. I didn't actually know that I could do that, or that's what I look like, or that's what I sounded like?
I have a really high voice, and I don't realize that. Like, I have a very nasal voice.
An amazing laugh too, by the way.
Oh my! Like amazing?
No, it is. It's an amazing.
It's pretty amazing. It is pretty amazing.
Oh man!
And everyone knows when you laugh within the whole quite a few blocks.
Right. Right. This is not new feedback. And it's from my mom, and she'd come to the school play, and I'd be like, I know where you are in the audience. It's so distracting. And then of course I got it.
But it's beautiful to watch and to listen to. You have a beautiful smile.
Thank you.
It's true. You have a beautiful. It really lines up, you know, the screen, and that's very important. It's not because of not because of likability. It's because it really pulls you in. It makes you feel happy.
Such a good day.
Yeah,
Thank
it's true.
you.
It's true. It's true.
And
we discussed it. Yeah.
Thank you. And you demonstrated today. Really?
We discussed it in Reno, in Albuquerque when you came.
And Edgar clearly has the most beautiful heart in the world.
No, I
You're
don't.
the most generous person. No, I don't.
No, I don't. No. But yeah. There's something that I wanted to add to what Matthew said about. But the question is that it's so amazing after all these years, and hopefully the ones ahead, when you reach that moment of grace. Right, when you're in the scene with and I can say this very freely here because we're all actors, you know, so this is the right place we all relate to this. When you're with your fellow actor and you enter that space, when everything disappears, I mean, that magic moment where, you know, you have 30 people behind, and you have all the machinery and you have everything, and then suddenly they don't exist. I mean, that's not what you remember when they say cut. It is so amazing for me. That's the moment of grace. That's why I imagine when a singer or when a dancer, when they reach the climax on stage, that's our climax. When you're there and you don't, and there's so many moments in this movie that I don't remember anything else. It was just right. It was just the moment and the experience and the impression. You know, I remember when that scene when I told you that, you know, we need to shut this down because, you know, when you gave me the credit cards, I remember that scene. But what I remember is what we discussed that day. You know, so it's very interesting when you look at the movie and then when you watch the movie and then you see the rest of the elements there. But all I remember is your face and your eyes and what we're discussing and the struggle and the fear. And of course, because of my character, we had an agreement that we would never discuss our secret. And now that I saw the movie today, I think that what it helped us to do was that we never reveal anything because things always stayed in the back of your head. And if you discuss something that would have an effect on you, but we decided there was a discussion that we had at the very beginning of the movie in Thailand.
Before we even started. Yeah.
Before we even started the movie, and he said that was our secret. We're never talking about it again. And even when Stephen came up, you know, normal conversations. I said, guys, what do you think about? Do you think that in this moment? I said, I don't know. You figure out yourself. We're not going to reveal anything, and that puts us on a level that it was very, very easy to it was a trigger, and that it puts us right there. And I remember that moment when you were touching the tiger, you know, the discussion, the deal making that we had there. You know, that was those are all the memories. And honestly, there was no tiger there when we shot that, but I do remember the fucking tiger because of that state that you get to. My best friend in that moment is going into that cage to touch a tiger. I was looking at my friend touching the fucking tiger. And I love that. I mean, this is why I do this job. Thank God. You know, just to reach to those moments, just to feel that moment of grace. And I don't know if it answers the question, but I just wanted to.
Certainly. Yeah. And I think we just have time for one more question. It's kind of a nice, poignant one. This is from Shane. And this is for Matthew. And he would like to know, how has your career changed since winning the Academy Award? And then at the end, he says, of course, just keep living.
All right, Shane. All right. How's it changed? Look, that was a wonderful, extraordinary, you know, signpost in my journey. It was, you know, that's our industry's par excellence, that someone said, hey, the work you did a year and a half ago, we're deeming excellent. And to get that award from my peers meant a lot. It was affirmative for me quite a bit. It meant a whole lot. Has it changed? I will say this. I mean, there are some things I'll say now that I said 10 years ago. But now people go, yeah. I gotta say that. I'm like, I said that 10 years ago, and now it's in bold print. That's mostly true. I mean, it's a joke, but it's also true.
It's the ultimate stamp of approval from the business.
Absolutely is, and that's afforded me more options. It's afforded me more choices. The option to be more discerning about the choices, where I got to really get to ask myself again. You know, I remember when in that place where it was like, there's 100 scripts out there. I'll do any of them, and one of them may be a yes, and then that suddenly starts to get inverted, and all these possible yeses are coming. And it's a privilege to be able to go, I've got to ask myself, who am I right now? What is it I'm really looking for? What experience am I really looking for? How can I go grow in my work, where my work just doesn't feel like an amendment to my life, but it's right there running part and parcel parallel with my life, and having kids and a wife and things that I get off to? How can they run next to each other and challenge each other? So it's a wonderful time for me in my career, and I love what I do now more than I ever have. And I love working on it more. My favorite thing to do, and we've kind of been saying versions of this, I mean, the high is the daily construction. It really doesn't get any better for me than the experience of the work. And boy, isn't it fun when they come up and tap you on the shoulder and go, that's a wrap. And you go, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. And they go, no, that's a wrap. It's over. And you're like, oh, really? That's a great feeling when you were just in it and someone has to tell you, please, you can go home. And you're like, oh, man.
That's the dream, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for being here. We really enjoyed it.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.